I want to mention this story as well. We touched on it just there. David Lammy, now the Justice Secretary, repeatedly refusing to rule out a future customs union return. His reasoning behind this apparently is that it could aid growth. Now, this row, of course, comes as the OBR links Brexit to weaker productivity and the Treasury downgrades growth. While some advisors urge exploring a customs union rethink. Critics, however, say it is a backdoor to an EU return. Let's have a listen to Mr. Lammy in action.
Our future is inextricably linked to the European Union, and we
part of the customs union.
And we should be working deliberately over time to be closer. That's my view.
Would you like to see us in a customs union or a single market?
That journey of travel to me is self-evident.
So the question, customs union?
That is not currently
Would you welcome
our policy. That's not currently where we are.
But should it be?
But you can see countries like Turkey with a customs union seemingly benefiting and seeing growth in their economy.
Right. Well, it works in Turkey, it could work for us, I think would be the not unreasonable observation to extrapolate from that particular conversation. In a moment, Peter Wilding, chairman of British Influence, the man who, and he's fed up of hearing this, who coined the word Brexit, did you know? We'll talk to Peter in just a second first. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, head of communications for Popular Conservatism, also former MEP. Annunziata, always good to have you on with us. I mean, who'd have thought it? The font of all wisdom, the oracle of Delphi, that is David Lammy telling us how to solve all of our problems, just get back in the EU, essentially.
Well, of course. I mean, you know, you scrap juries, you delay elections, and you undo the biggest democratic vote our country's ever had. Suits Labour down to a T. They just don't really like the whole democracy thing. But he's also, I mean, his whole argument is so flawed that the UK, for all its ills, is not like Turkey. We are a developed economy. Turkey is still very much a developing one. We are much closer in economic terms to France and Germany. And since Brexit, we have outstripped them. And in the last few years, even more so, that our growth rate is bad, but it's getting worse because of Rachel Reeves. This is a look somewhere else, let's blame something else, a tactic by Labour to do what they've always wanted to do, which was for us to never leave the EU in the first place.
When David Lammy talks in these tones, I mean, he said, look, it's not currently the question. We know that Keir Starmer, not even secretly, very publicly, is out there pressing a lot of flesh over there at the EU. I think he's gained more air miles doing that than he has in his various other foreign trips. There is a sense that some form of new negotiation is taking place. Am I being too cynical here, do you think?
I don't think you are at all. I think you're being absolutely accurate. I think we have long known Keir Starmer's views on the EU and EU membership, and after all, he tried to lead the campaign for us to rejoin. They did every legal lawfare they possibly could in order to prevent Brexit ever happening, which did water down the end effect of what we got in Brexit, which needs to be done more fully and more completely from a democratic and sovereign point of view. But this is all for the birds. That, you know, he quoted the Turkey thing. It seemed to imply that he thinks we get these huge growth rates. There was a paper out this week that said we would get higher growth rates, but that based the forecasts on us being very like America, and it would have put us at double the growth rate of France, Italy, or Germany. That doesn't seem likely. Yeah. If we're under the same rules and the same restrictions as them. We have an opportunity to do that. If we're not, if we did rejoin the customs union, of course, we'd have to scrap our USA trade deal, our Indian trade deal, our Trans-Pacific trade deals, and we would be yet again trapped in the EU orbit, which is the slowest growing trading bloc in the world.
Are you of that belief, and I think you alluded to it somewhere in your answer, that we haven't really got the full Brexit yet?
Completely. That the Northern Ireland issues have not been properly dealt with. Under Labour, we gave up our fisheries yet again, postponing ever taking those back in normal timeframes, which we could have done next year. We need to have a Brexit where our producers are free to produce under purely British rules and decide who they trade with. And at the moment, we still kowtow to a lot of EU things. And that also prevents us really taking advantage of our deals with the rest of the world that actually is growing.
On that point, Annunziata, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Great to have you on with us. Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Head of Communications for Popular Conservatism. Let's speak to Peter Wilding, Chairman of British Influence. Peter, good afternoon to you. Always lovely to have you with us. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would imagine you probably disagree with almost everything you've just heard.
I do. But in some respects, Annunziata is right like a stop clock twice a day. Let's go to where she's wrong, first of all. This government's principal strategy is growth. And nobody is disputing that growth is needed in our economy, and it's bloody difficult to find. Keir Starmer has figures from the OBR all the way to Stanford University telling him that the current Brexit arrangement is losing him between 40 billion and 90 billion quid a year from lost tax revenue. That's huge. It's twice the education budget. And naturally, a sensible government is going to say, how on earth do we recapture that money? Now, the elephant in the room is obvious. We chose a hard Brexit back in 2021, which meant that, as everybody of your listeners know, we have to pay charges for getting post. We have to pay charges on moving furniture across borders. That's a hard Brexit. Our businesses that Annunziata was mentioning, let's try British rules. They don't want to try British rules. That means that only British rules apply, and they want to sell to the world. And European Union rules, and that allowed them, when we're in the single market, to trade throughout the European Union. So the point here is, if you want the money, you've got to have a solution. And Annunziata had no solution apart from trust ball, more American madness, which happened then. So Starmer has to look at this, he has to find the revenue, and he has to find a way out of this. Customs union, single market are the answers. Everybody knows it, but he can't do it because he's timid. His politics don't allow him, whilst the entirety of the Labour Party want that solution.
How does a country like India seem to be doing so well and growing? They're not in the EU. They would never, by definition, be in the EU. Are you suggesting it's not achievable to be in the EU unless you, live in a certain area of the globe? What's the deal there?
The globalised world means you prosper when you've got scale. Scale India has in droves. The biggest population in the world, the most educated youth population in the world. This is the future for India. We are not a scale country. We've only got 60 million population. And if we want to barricade ourselves behind our own rules, we avoid scale. We had scale in the single market and we prospered very mightily because of it. So that's why India doesn't need to join the European Union. We joined the European Union, the common market, because we believed we would have had scale for our businesses to prosper. And we did. So that is the reason India is not a comparative.
But of course, there are. You'd acknowledge there are trade-offs. Of course, you may well. I mean, one of the problems, the obvious problem, I suppose, freedom of movement, for example. So if you went over to the EU tomorrow, knocked on the door at Brussels HQ, and said, "Hi guys, we'd like to come back, but only for some customs stuff. Is that okay?" And they will say, "Well, freedom of movement, that's up there number one." And the argument from the British government would be, well, we're not able to entertain that, and then they would close the door. So there is the problem with it, isn't it? There are maybe some areas that would be beneficial, but of course there's other areas that would be problematic.
Customs union has nothing to do with free movement for a
start.
No,
but it may well be, it's not, no, correct, but it may well be used as, you can have that, but you have to give us this.
Single market is about free movement. I'm going to tell you a story, Ian. I went to see Theresa May when she was Home Secretary in 2011 and said you can keep membership of the single market and control free movement. There was part of the treaties which allowed you to restrict free movement on grounds of public policy, public health, or public security. We never took that chance. Theresa May told me to her face that it wasn't British and we didn't have the capacity to control it. So we chose not to exercise the power we could have done to control free movement. So we are moving on a steady, baby steps, useless way forward to try and recoup up to £90 billion worth of lost revenue, but without the political will, determination, or credibility to do so. So, Ian, this story is going nowhere because Keir Starmer doesn't have the guts to take it any further. And he doesn't have the power to communicate against a very hostile potential world, Farage included. You were talking about him earlier on. Doesn't want to rope in the debate. So he has the prize, but he's too weak to go for it.
Final question, Peter. You obviously would rather we were in the EU still, bells and whistles and all the rest of it. Do you foresee a time when we will return to that bloc? And if so, when?
Things change, cycles of history move. Britain has actually not done too badly out of the EU. That's primarily because Annunziata was correct to say France and Germany have done worse than us. So the figures flatter to deceive us somewhat. Geopolitics is going to change everything, Ian. Britain is a big player diplomatically and in military terms. If I was a British leader right now, I'd say this. I'd follow Macron, who decided to create a European political community and say, let's think bigger than the European Union and try and lead Europe as a continent against Russia. And of course, the man who started this process was none other than Winston Churchill, the man who created the Council of Europe. And wiser leaders than we have now would try and get the bit between the teeth to try and change the weather.
And on that point, Peter Wilding, thank you, sir. Lovely to have you on as ever. I know there'll be